Hello and welcome to the Tank Club. I've spent a few weeks playing Final Fantasy XIV and this is an MMORPG game that is very accessible for aspiring new tanks. The ARR story is long and a bit of a grind, but the positive side of it is the way that you are introduced to content at a good pace. You enter some of the older content, which is a lot easier, and you're given the opportunity to learn your class and develop your tank skills. In this video, I'm going to show you a quick guide on how to play the Gladiator, which converts into a Paladin later, and show you from a beginner level how to play it. In future videos, we'll show you more information on how to play this class at a higher level, and also do the same thing including the other tank classes, the Warrior, Dark Knight, and Gunbreaker. The first two things you need to think about are your hotkeys and your HUD. I've not fully customized my HUD yet, but one thing I have done is I've started off by using 3 bars. This is because at the start you have very few abilities, but once you start pushing level 90, you'll have a lot of abilities you need to slot, so I wanted to get used to it as soon as possible. Secondly, I moved my enemy list so it is more visible for me. You'll need this to be accessible, and the way this works is it will name all enemies you're in combat with. If you have a green icon next to their name, you don't have them aggroed. Orange means that you almost have them aggroed or you're losing aggro, and red means they are locked onto you and you are in control of them. For my bar setup, I have the top one with my kind of long cooldowns and activation skills, my second bar with my rotation and combo skills, and then my third bar with my damage mitigation skills. Entering your first dungeon is usually a stressful thing in most MMORPG games, but that's not really the case in Final Fantasy XIV. The first thing you need to do in every dungeon is turn on your stance. For a Gladiator, this is Iron Will, and you have to do this every time because you quickly outlevel the content in this game and the dungeons will scale you down to a specific level at the start. This always turns off your stance when you go into a dungeon, so you'll need to turn it back on. By having this turned on, it makes your life incredibly easier because enemies will aggro to you and maintain their aggro very easy by having this on. The second most important thing you have to do is turn enemies away from your group in almost all situations, especially at the beginning of the game. At the start of each dungeon you'll get ad pulls and you have these in between all boss fights. My preferred way to deal with these is to use my shield lob onto one of these enemies, and this will instigate combat. All the enemies in that ad pull usually get targeted to me then, and I will then use my AoE damage skill Eclipse to get a hit on every enemy to ensure that I have aggro. Next you want to pop a mitigation skill, and these have quite long cooldowns, so the idea is to spread them out. I use Reprisal on the first ad pull, and then on the second one I'll use my other mitigation skill Rampart. By the third pull my Reprisal will be available again, so you'll want to rotate them for each ad pull. Additionally, once you are a bit more comfortable and you have a decent group, a decent healer, you can begin pulling 2 to 3 ad pulls together at a time, which means you might need to use both mitigation skills, but you'll clear all the ads in one pull. When you reach higher levels and you do higher level dungeons, you'll also have access to more mitigation skills and some self-healing and things like that. When I am pulling multiple ads together, I always use my sprint skill to get ahead of my group and to run fast to get the next pull. While I'm running, I will target enemies in my enemy list who are starting to lose aggro, and I'll shield lob them. Each ad pull, I hit my AoE skills, and once everything is stacked, I hit my mitigation skills and I spam my AoE damage. It's also important to try and point enemies away from your group because they'll often do charge attacks and AoE attacks, and you want to try to avoid all the red AoEs that you see on the ground. When we get to bosses, things change a little bit because now you might only have one enemy to deal with. I wait for my group to be closer or in the boss area, and I start off with a Provoke. I use this sparingly as a tank because you often don't need to use it, but it can be helpful to force an enemy to target you, especially when you start doing 8 people trials in the future. On a boss you want to maintain doing your damage combo rotation, and this consists of Fast Blade followed by Riot Blade, and this is also a good time to make sure you're keeping up your fight or flight skill, which increases your damage, and you want to be using this on cooldown. You can use that during ad pulls too if you're not too busy, but your priority in those ad pulls is to be rotating and maintaining aggro and rotating your damage mitigation. I keep low blow on my bar as a skill because it works really well for most bosses, especially at the start. When they do AoE or channel attacks, you can hit low blow and stun them, which prevents them from doing the attack. If you are on a boss fight where adds spawn, sometimes you are not expected to aggro them all, but the best way to do so is by using your enemy list and using shield lob or provoke to make the attack you. Bosses are a bit different to ad pulls because you don't want to waste all of your mitigation skills. There are things known as tank busters, where you gain a red indicator around your character. This is telling you that a huge hit is about to happen and you need to pop your mitigation skills at this point. Generally, I will use reprisal on cooldown on bosses and save my rampart for tank busters. Outside of this, you simply need to learn and play mechanics. If you can't low blow the enemy to stop an AoE attack, then just walk out of it. This is the general basics of tanking in Final Fantasy XIV. We'll have some more detailed information and guides on the way in the future. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.